The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
All right, here we go with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. And major kudos to my good buddy Caleb Calhoun filling in for me last week. I think the first time I'd ever missed a significant amount of time during football season. So a little bit of medical issues in my life. And if you're a praying type of person, keep us in your thoughts and prayers. But everything appears to be good now. So we'll get off and rolling as we got college football playoffs to talk about. Playoffs, that's right. We'll get to that. So we've got a lot to get to. Also, before the end of the program, we shall discuss Dylan Sampson and where his legacy is among the top tailbacks in Tennessee football history. Also, Lonza Hayward decommits from Tennessee. That's a what the H for sure. This day in Tennessee sports history. Also, bank on it. Should Alabama get in the college football playoff over the ACC title game loser? Planting flags at midfield. What do you think of that? Does Clemson losing but increasing their college football playoff odds prove the format is stupid? I'm beginning to think that. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am good. Welcome back, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm much better in this seat where I wanted to be. So I love talking to you and our fantastic, incredible listeners. Thank you for your patience. I thought about you guys every single day. So let's go ahead and get it off and running. 4 Downs brought to you by our good buddy Medicare Misty. And we're going to talk some balls in the college football playoffs.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show. 4 Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, here we go. So, Caleb, I love these projections, and everybody's guessing. It seems so odd to me, especially when you watch the NFL, and I watched a lot of that last night. You know exactly what team's going to be playing who, but college football is not like that. So I've said before, this is a TV show with the selection committee. This is a TV show with what they put together on these upcoming playoffs. And Caleb, I'm a firm believer that with the TV show intact, that you need to be really mindful of a couple of different things. And that is, we're talking about it, right? You've got Brad Edwards. You've got all these different college football guys that are talking about it. We're talking about other people making the decision, which really is as college football can be. And I think that's ultimately what this committee wants. Let's dive into it. 4 Downs, again, brought to you by Medicare Misty. What down is it first, Coop? Tell us what to do.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right.
Coop here. First down.
All right. First down is this. Will the Vols host Ohio State? Now, Ohio State has a higher strength of schedule, but I think the Vols are better right now. But let's start with strength of the schedule. How do you think that'll factor in, Caleb?
I think it'll factor in a lot. Ohio State ever so slightly has a better strength of schedule. And this is across all metrics. If you do FPI, if you do standard, just record of opponents, opponents, if you factor in home versus away, when you take everything into account, Ohio State does have the better strength of schedule. But again, it is ever so slightly. By most metrics, Tennessee is in the 10 to 15, in about the 10 to 14 range, and Ohio State's in about the 7 to 10 range. There's never more than 3 to 4 spots separating Tennessee and Ohio State in strength of schedule.
Well, we talk a lot about strength of schedule in this thing, and I think all the contenders need to look at their schedule in the off season as a way that they could help themselves. I guess, I don't know. We'll see what happens to those undefeated teams. Well, there's not a lot left now. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, let me throw this at you, Caleb. Ohio State has more quality wins. Now, I'm supposed to say, wait, you have the University of Tennessee that plays in the SEC, so that's a better conference, right? But you think that Ohio State has more quality wins.
Well, I don't think it's just, unfortunately for Tennessee, a fact. Quality wins, I mean, you have to go based on rankings. Now, if you ask me, on a neutral field, I think you and I both agree Alabama would beat Indiana or Penn State. Is that fair to say?
Yes, no doubt about it.
But I think there's no doubt that we have to count Indiana and Penn State as quality wins because both teams are college football playoff teams. Not only are both teams college football playoff teams, they're also both ranked ahead of Alabama. So when you take that into account, I don't think you can look at Ohio State's resume and Tennessee's resume and say, well, Tennessee did beat Alabama and they play in the SEC, even though Ohio State beat two college football playoff teams. Tennessee beat one team that might get in the college football playoff, which we're going to discuss later. And if they do, it will generate outrage because a lot of people don't want to see them get into the college football playoff.
I think the committee might. We're referring to that red team to the south, as Butch Jones used to call it. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Well, thank you, Coop. The Vols' worst loss is better than Ohio State's worst loss.
Yes. And now, to the untrained eye, what do you mean? Ohio State lost to Michigan and Tennessee lost to Arkansas. That's the same caliber team this year, Arkansas and Michigan, for anybody who's been watching. But Tennessee lost to Arkansas on the road. Ohio State lost to Michigan at home. Now, you can debate college basketball doesn't do this or didn't used to, but some people don't think you should factor in home and away with schedule strength. I think you should. By that logic, Tennessee should get credit for having a better worst loss. However, I got to throw a couple of caveats in here before we get to fourth down, which is that Ohio State's quote unquote good loss, Dave, is technically better than Tennessee's good loss because Ohio State's good loss is to Oregon. Tennessee's is to Georgia. Both are on the road, but Oregon's ranked higher than Georgia. Oregon's undefeated and number one. Georgia has 2 losses, and Ohio State lost that game by 1 point, or Tennessee lost theirs by 2 touchdowns. So while Ohio State's worst loss is worse than Tennessee's worst loss, their good loss, looks significantly better than Tennessee's good loss.
Oof, man, Caleb's bringing the objectivity. 4 downs brought to you by Medicare Misty. The fourth down's always the best one. That's a possession down.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
You say that politics favors the Vols. Why?
Yes. So let's just take the most basic level first. Recency bias favors Tennessee. I mean, if you see how Ohio State played, we're going to talk a little bit later about Tennessee peaking at the right time. Dave, you bring up this is a TV show. If it's a TV show, don't you want the team that you think is better in the moment advancing a little further?
Yes, I think you do. And you like the fact that Tennessee's offense has shown some pop lately because, let's face it, a lot of people want to see scoring.
Exactly. Now, this is where, and I stand by all my criticism of the SEC on this, but this is where a comment Dave has been making for 2 years comes into play. Guys, I don't care that the committee is technically a separate entity from ESPN. ESPN holds the college football playoff. ESPN holds the purse. The SEC is going to get preferential treatment because of that. So with Tennessee versus Ohio State, you don't think Greg Sankey can make a call, Dave, and just kind of be like, be ashamed if we did something that could mess with y'all's contracts and things like that.
Well, I think that could be a factor. Now, I think it would be a factor, especially if you were talking about Tennessee and Indiana, okay? Because you would you would go to that committee and you would say, you're not going to host a playoff game at Indiana, right? You're going to do that at Neyland Stadium. So Neyland Stadium should help you. But in the case with Ohio State, if you look at it from a national perspective and not an SEC perspective, then the two home fields are pretty comparable, right?
They're pretty much even. There's an 800 seat difference between the two. Tennessee, I tried to track last night who makes more money. Tennessee has made more money in the last couple of years than Ohio State, despite Ohio State being in the college football playoff race both times after Tennessee was eliminated. So Tennessee, I think, is a more profitable program. The stadiums Ohio State has about 800 more seats. But the most important thing, Dave, is I think we're not paying attention to this. I think a lot of Ohio State fans are very apathetic about this playoff because they want Ryan Day fired. And
see, that's where I thought you would go with one of the downs, because it's hard for me to say that a crowd's not going to show up for a playoff game, right?
Right.
But there's a part of me that thinks that some of those Ohio State fans might look at it kind of like, was it Stan Heath that won the SEC basketball tournament at Georgia?
Frank. Oh my gosh. What? Now I got to look. It wasn't Stan Heath. It was another guy.
Dennis Felton. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So he wins that game, and it was like none of the Georgia fans were excited to win that basketball tournament because now you're going to extend it. So I think they look at that. You're not going to say go out and lose a playoff game just so that you can fire your coach. At least I wouldn't think so. But I do wonder, based off what I've heard from Ohio State peeps, I do wonder if that will be somewhat of a factor. Whereas if you hold one at Tennessee in Knoxville, Neyland Stadium, I'll say this, with the backdrop of that as a television show, I would take Neyland Stadium just a little bit over Ohio State Stadium, or whatever they call it. The
Ohio Stadium, and that's what it's called.
Yes.
I would too. I mean, and I think and this is where so if you take in Tennessee has a little bit more of an edge with Neyland Stadium. There's the direct tie to the SEC on ESPN, and there's the recency bias. All the politicking favors Tennessee, whether or not you think they deserve to host a playoff game.
I've got one other politicking that I think favors Tennessee. Did you watch that game last night, Sunday night in the NFL? Did you see the weather?
Last night's game.
Yeah. Did you see the weather there in Buffalo? You don't want a weather game. You don't. And you're less likely to have a weather game in Knoxville than you would at Ohio Stadium. So I think that those politics help Tennessee as well.
I never thought about that. You're absolutely right. Now that would help more if you were a deep South team like in Georgia or Alabama or Florida, because as you know, it can get cold up in the mountains in Knoxville in certain times. Almost get like a Midwest climate. But you were right. It's still more likely to have better weather in Knoxville than in Ohio. Whereas, I mean, I don't think I've ever watched a Big Ten game with clear skies in November. Have you in your life?
No. I mean, it's depressing sometimes to think about. And to me, again, I say it's a television show. I would rather take a 30% chance that you have horrible weather in Knoxville than a 40% chance that you have horrible weather in Columbus.
Yeah, the Super Bowl. Look at them. They hosted in New York one year, and everybody freaked out because they thought that there could be bad weather coming. And then they decided, nope, not doing this again. The Super Bowl every year is going to be in sunny weather or in a dome. Period. End of story. And they do that for the national championship game. So you're right. That is politicking. So look, at the root of this, I have to be honest. And you're right, Matt. I know many of our listeners won't like me for saying this, but Tennessee, Ohio State, objective look at resumes, Ohio State does deserve the home game over Tennessee. But I think politicking is going to favor Tennessee.
Yep, I tend to agree with that. And I'll throw this out there as well. I think a big factor will be the overall feel of the programs. I think they will factor that in. I do wonder this, and tell me if this is being conspiracy theorist, Dave, and maybe we can make this a poll question. Do you think the College Football Playoff Committee will favor the SEC, favor Tennessee, or give Tennessee the hose like has been the case with Dylan Sampson not being on the Doak Walker, with all the various Heisman moments that haven't happened for Tennessee? Doesn't it seem like Tennessee gets hosed more times than not, or am I wrong?
It does, but it does. I mean, again, there is like a seeming of that. I mean, you can go back to Johnny Majors and the Heisman in '56 losing to Paul Hornung. Truth be told, though, the biggest hose we sometimes overlook, the biggest hose was that Jim Brown didn't win the Heisman that year. He should have won it over Majors or Paul Hornung. But yes, there has been a long history of Tennessee getting hosed. I've made the case that Tennessee players should absolutely not show up for award ceremonies when they're invited to them anymore. They should just not show up.
There you go. I get my Heisman ballot today. So do you want me to tell you who I'm voting for?
I don't think you can you?
Can't. I'm not supposed to. Tennessee with a decommitment right before the early national signing period. Here we go. What the H? Brought to you by T. Scott Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, Caleb, you wrote the column on it. Explain to me why Lonza Hayward is no longer a Tennessee commitment, and then I'll give you the little bit of intel that I've been able to gather about him and about the upcoming national signing day. Go ahead, Caleb.
All right, so yes, 4-star Lonza Hayward, 4-star across the board. One of the top 5 players in this 2025 recruiting class, a safety, decommitted from the Vols yesterday, less than 3 weeks after sending out a video insisting he's not flipping. So he decommits, and then not only does he decommit, but he also proceeds to lean towards Florida as his favorite. Reports are out that that Florida is easily the favorite to land him now, and that it's reportedly down to Florida and Georgia. He's from Lyons, Georgia, which is below, as Dave would call it, the Nat line. So it's not Atlanta area. It's targeting the Florida-Georgia line. So you could see him being down to those 2 schools. I wrote that his decommitment makes no sense, not just because of him flipping, or not just because of him saying he's not flipping, but if it was going to be about Georgia, you would think he would have done it when Georgia beat Tennessee later that week, not 2 weeks later. He didn't do it then. If it was the Florida one, would just make no sense because there's nothing Florida can offer him right now that Tennessee can't offer better on paper. Now you can say NIL, you can say it's all about NIL,
or you could say he could be the next head coach at Florida.
That's where I was going. You could say NIL, but it's not going to be NIL. Like, nobody's going to pick Florida over NIL right now, given what had happened with the Jaden Rashada situation. So NIL is not, and Tennessee, Lonza Hayward was at the top of their priority list. So they weren't going to lose an NIL battle, an NIL battle for this guy to Florida. My only conspiracy theory on this, and I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory, is that Tim Banks and Willie Martinez were the ones who recruited Lonza Hayward. And
First, what the H? Brought to you by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks and Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. All right, Caleb Calhoun has a conspiracy theory that he's going to defend, just like Banks and Jones, banksandjones.com. What's your conspiracy theory?
Well, it involves the name in Banks and Jones.
Nice.
But let's start with this. Willie Martinez, I'll go with the lesser one first. He's on a year-to-year contract. So if he's the one recruiting you, you have no idea what's in store for Willie Martinez after this year. Tim Banks is a Broyles Award finalist for the nation's top assistant and is the hottest commodity, I think, in college football and defensive coordinators looking for head coaching jobs. I don't really think it's close. I think it's very, very possible that Tim Banks – I think it's possible that the news is leaking that Tim Banks is leaving and already has some offers lined up, and that hit Lonza Hayward.
Okay. I want to get to Hayward specifically and what I think about him, and also some things I've been told about National Signing Day coming up. But let me address that. I think Tim Banks deserves a good job, not just a job, but a good job. However, I'm not so sure that he's going to be successful, Caleb. I think he is a better tactician than he's given credit for. But why was this defense so good? Caleb, this defense was good because NIL, not TIM.
Okay.
They had depth. You go out and you retool a secondary completely because of partly NIL and transfers. You have depth and guys that have stayed on the defensive line. That wasn't what you saw from Tim Banks. Was not an incredible defense because he was just dialing up the right plays. It was great because of roster building. So I don't know that Tim Banks will be a fantastic hire somewhere else. He might, but I don't know that that's a guarantee. And I would encourage him, now that assistant coaches make a ton of money and they're financially secure and they have multi-year contracts, it might behoove him to stay at Tennessee a little bit longer, Caleb, and see what else opens up.
It might. But we have to take this into account. I would say personally, here's what I've said with defensive coordinators, David. I don't know if you agree with me, but defensive coordinators at high profile jobs having success, like Tim Banks is at Tennessee, more than offensive coordinators, they should really hold out for a great job, shouldn't they? Because you can't build a program from the ground up as a great defensive coach. You just can't do it because defense wins with Jimmys and Joes, offense wins with X's and O's. So I would say hold out. But maybe he wants to take a shot. And it's just the only thing that would explain this decommitment to me. And look, we're not sure of the offers he's getting either. He could be getting a very good offer from a very good school. And maybe a couple others that should be looking. What about Miami?
Yeah, and here's the other thing to remember about these schools that are going to come calling. There are going to be some schools that are going to tell him that we're going all in, like Indiana did. I mean, give Indiana credit. I've made fun of them for being a basketball school, but they did go all in with facility upgrades, spending on NIL to get guys. So maybe you have somebody that calls. I'm just randomly picking a team out. Iowa just calls and says, we're going all in. NIL, and we're getting serious about football, because here's what's going to start to happen. You're going to start to lose teams. And I'm talking about good teams that are going to drop down to the FCS level. And I think that's going to happen sooner than you think. And if you're not in a Power 4 conference, and really some of those teams I don't think will be around. I mean, I think you've got to think about it if you're like trying to think about an NC State. I mean, you could go down, you could drop down to the FCS level, have a good product that people enjoy. I'm just picking a random school out there, Caleb. Do you have one that might fit the mold?
You're talking about a group of 5 school, like a UNLV right now, even though I think UNLV is a sleeping giant. They're playing for the Mountain West title this week, but you're right. A school like that, they could go from playing to get into the college football playoff to falling to FCS level if things go a certain way.
All right. So here's what I've been told about the National Signing Day. And update our poll question if you don't care, Caleb. What do we got there?
Right now, I said, do you think the CFP committee will favor Tennessee? And 32% say yes, they want to help the SEC, and 68% say no, they hate the Vols.
All right. I tend to agree with that. I think your Banks theory is for real. I do. And I think it's being used against Tennessee and the recruiting trail, even if it's not true. Caleb, I've covered recruits that have asked me, what do you think of the rumors about this guy cheating? I'm like, I don't know anything about that. And I've had recruits ask me about situations away from football. So I think that right now there's a negative war being waged against Tennessee because they're one of the hot teams in the nation. So I can, if I'm a coach and a recruiter, I can go to Lonza Hayward and tell him that, hey, just want to let you know Tim Banks is going for another job. And maybe he doesn't leave. I bet you Tim Banks doesn't know for sure if he's going to leave. I don't know that he has an offer. Caleb, the other thing that I will tell you is I'm wary of Lonza Hayward. And I'm not going to be one of those guys that calls out decommits and gets on Twitter and rips them and all that stuff. But it seems to me like he enjoyed playing the game a little bit. Would you agree with that? The recruiting game?
I agree. I can agree with you on that.
Now, if that's the case, is that the kind of guy you want in your locker room?
I don't think that's a factor. Boo Carter enjoyed playing the recruiting game last year, and he still was committed to Tennessee the whole time. And who doesn't want Boo Carter in their locker room? Have you guys seen how hard he plays?
Yeah, but he was, Caleb, but he played the recruiting game a little bit by going to Colorado. But it seems like to me you're putting a video out and then you're decommitting. You're really playing the game. That's like a whole different level.
Yeah. I mean, yes, that is very true. But again, this is why it makes it nobody. I get what your point is about playing the recruiting game, and nobody would embarrass themselves to 180 the way he just did. The only way you would do that is if something happened that made you really change your mind that you didn't expect was going to lead you to change your mind. And as SC Scout Guy points out, it's funny you bring up what you just brought up because the brilliant, ever so brilliant Jim McElwain is no longer the coach at Central Michigan. I believe he has retired. And Tim Banks has experience at Central Michigan. If I'm not mistaken, Dave, he graduated from Central Michigan. He did. So, and
that's where you think he lands, and Central Michigan comes to him. And they see, that's a scary job to me, because I could see Central Michigan, depending on who the booster base is, of being a contender for what, I don't know, or dropping down to the FCS level, which I'm going to call Division II, because they both have championships now.
Yeah, but if they do drop to Division II, that'll just be where coaches are plucked out of at that point, and maybe Banks is the scary part is never taking like the Central Michigan job. The scary part is taking the Power 5 job at the program that is in the state that Tennessee was in 2010, because then you have a really tough job to rebrand the program. And I think Tim Banks, for the record, and you're right, you can win at Central Michigan. Jim McElwain won there, Brian Kelly won there, and Butch Jones won 2 MAC titles at Central Michigan in 3 years. Butch Jones did. So,
okay, now Adam brings up a great point. Can Central Michigan even pay Banks more for head coach than Tennessee does a defensive coordinator? That's a great point. I think you're going to see the separation in teams more so than you saw during the Division I, Division II days. And I don't know that he can make more money at Central Michigan. I would think you would make more money, but it's probably comparable.
Yeah, it is. It's a bet on yourself moment, though, isn't it, Dave? I mean, we've all bet on ourselves before. You probably turned down pay because you bet on yourself. I bet you did that for launching Off the Hook. That was a bet on yourself. So what do you do if you're Tim Banks? If you believe in yourself, why not bet on yourself? I mean, this is where the more I talk about it, I just think that's the only explanation that makes sense, because the nature of if he was playing the game, he wouldn't say I'm 100% not flipping the way he did. If you do that, it's like breaking certain promises. There's something that came out that he didn't expect to come out to lead him to change his mind.
Okay, so our poll question is brand new, and it's brought to you by our good friends at Work Trucks, and I'll tell you more about them. Can you read our poll question before we get results on that, Caleb? And I'll tell our good friends about Work Trucks.
Do you want Lonza Hayward? Yes, come back. No, he's flipped.
I love how recruiting works. By the way, I want to pass along some information I've been told about recruiting. It's going to be a little hairier than you're used to in that early signing period. Brought to you by Work Trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle available now. Time is money. That is absolutely true. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contract is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app-hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you, get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville and downtown Birmingham. The entire inventory is online at worktrucksllc.com. The vehicle you have to have. They'll even find the perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. I've been told by some people that this early signing period got a little bit boring. And I I think it's going to be a little hairier this time around because of NIL dollars. Caleb, I think you're going to see some schools be more aggressive. Our poll question is this, and that is, do you want Lonza Hayward? Yes, come back at 50%. No, he's a flipper. Do you remember the show Flipper about the dolphin?
No, but I remember the movie because I was taken to see it in second grade.
There was a
Flipper
movie?
Want to fight with the Yeah, Flipper want to fight with the hammerhead shark.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
You know that's animal abuse, by the way.
Well, yeah, yes, I do actually. Just like SeaWorld is animal abuse. Whales should not be stuck in a pool when they swim miles and miles at a time. But yeah.
But back in the day, SeaWorld was really fun. Riding the Kraken, that was great. Did you ever go to SeaWorld?
No, I never did.
Multiple times because the Vols played in a lot of Citrus Bowls. All right, there you go. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Coming up, as Caleb will cue up our break here, coming up this day in Tennessee sports history, where does Dylan Sampson rank among all-time tailbacks? He's not getting his due from the national media, but we'll throw that out there because he's one of the best running backs I've ever seen, and I've seen some pretty good ones. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, we'll make it today's tough question as we'll get to that right now. I do want to remind everybody that tomorrow we'll be joined by John Adams. Wednesday, we'll be joined by our good buddy Jimmy Himes as well. So a lot going on. And then later in the week, it'll be Ollie Lane. So a lot going on, as I mentioned one other time. This day in Tennessee sports history is coming up as well. So where do you want to go with this? Dylan Sampson, where does he rank among all-time Tennessee tailbacks, or where does this season rank among all-time Tennessee tailbacks?
I think this season, and I wanted to debate this, is the greatest season in the history of running backs for Tennessee football.
Running backs or a running back?
In the history of a running back. No running back has ever had a season this great.
Okay.
I think there are two that compete, and they don't have Dylan Sampson's numbers technically, but they come close. One that competes, believe it or not, Dave, is Jamal Lewis's freshman season at Tennessee. Jamal Lewis rushed for 1,364 yards that year. That was very close to the record. And he didn't even start until week 4. So if Jamal Lewis had started the whole season, he would have easily set the record. However, Dylan Sampson set the all-time rushing record for Tennessee on Saturday for a single season. He broke Travis Stevens' record, and he did it in one less game, by the way, in just 12 games. He has Gene McKeever. He has the all-time scoring record in Tennessee football history now. He's number 1 in scoring in a single season. He has the all-time touchdowns record in a single season for Tennessee. I can listen to an argument for Jamal Lewis because of what I just talked about. But at the same time, Dave, Jamal Lewis had a lot more open running lanes in 1997 because, there was this guy named Peyton Manning throwing the ball all over the field.
There was, and there was another factor to look at too. We're excluding some guys automatically because they had a split carries. Dylan Sampson was in a position where he was kind of the only guy. So if they'd had Peyton Lewis ready and he would have gotten 30% of the carries, then we're not even having this discussion. So he benefited from good fortune. So when you had Travis Henry and Travis Stevens, for instance, on the same team, they split some carries. I will tell you this with the eye test, and I know you get mad at me for using eye test all the time. First of all, he's a perfect fit for this system. So if you're running this system, I would take him over Travis Henry. And I don't think Travis Henry is a generational tailback like, I don't know, Saquon Barkley, who I think is really good. Then you have Arian Foster. Now, they have some similarities between the two. They got a lot of yards. They were the main go-to guys, and there were some fumbling issues. Not nearly as bad with Dylan Sampson as Arian Foster, but probably more comparable than you think. Then you get to James Stewart, Johnny Jones, Jamal Lewis. No offense to Stewart or Jones, but I think that Dylan Sampson is a better tailback. I think he's a better tailback than Cedric Houston. I think he's a better tailback than Jay Graham, which I can't believe I'm saying. I think he's a better tailback than Montario Hardesty because of health. I mean, if I go further down the list of the all-time rushing leaders at Tennessee, I would probably take a guy like Reggie Cobb if I just had him for 1 year, no matter what system, over Dylan Sampson. But in this system, you could make an argument that he's your go-to easy.
So eye test, I'm not going to knock you on that because there's 2 running backs that I think in Tennessee history you take eye test, assuming they are going to play at their peak. And that is Jamal Lewis and Chuck Webb. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
Those are 2 just freakishly talented running backs, right?
Totally agree. And if you know they're healthy and you're going into a season or you hope they're healthy, you would take them over Dylan Sampson, no question.
Yeah, you take them over any 2 running backs in Tennessee football history. Those are the 2 most freakishly talented running backs. But we've talked about Jamal Lewis in the past and how he kind of phoned in his last year at Tennessee. And production has to count. And I'm just going to throw one thing at you, Dave, with eye test. Eye test, I never saw a quarterback throw the ball better than Aaron Rodgers. I never saw somebody play quarterback better than Aaron Rodgers based on eye test. But you're taking Tom Brady over Aaron Rodgers, right? Because of his production. You're taking Peyton Manning over Aaron Rodgers, right? Even though Aaron Rodgers throws the ball way better than those 2 guys and has way better tools in general. The production has to count. Dylan Sampson has the production, and he has it without the level of help. I mean, we talk about Chuck Webb and Jamal Lewis. Let's be fair to Chuck Webb. He only played half a season, and then he got hurt. But they both had a much more dominant passing attack backing them up. And not that Nico Iamaleava is not good. We're going to talk about Tennessee peaking at the right time a little bit later. But look, this 3-3-5 and the way defenses have schemed against Tennessee this year has really taken out the power of the passing game. So Dylan Sampson has become, and we're calling him second half Dylan. He's playing like, I can't believe I'm saying this, and my brother said this to me over the weekend, and he was right. He's like Alvin Kamara, But Dave, he plays like Derrick Henry, because what does he do? He wears you down until in the fourth quarter, he gashes you. Or another before Derrick Henry. Do you remember when Eddie George would do that for the Titans back in the day?
Yep, I do.
He would only average about 3.5 yards a carry, but you would get worn down so much tackling him that he would gas you in the fourth quarter. Dylan Sampson's playing like that, even though his build is more like an all-purpose back.
Well, let me tell you, too, why Dylan Sampson fumbled, okay? And that's brought to you by Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration, peakivhydration.com. Let me tell you why Dylan Sampson's special, and if you want to give him a little notch over another guy on the list, you can. Because we've talked to Cooper Mays on the Vol Report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, and he's told us what a leader that he was at the tailback position. And I don't think Cooper's going to make that up as an offensive lineman. An offensive lineman doesn't look at a skill position guy and say, oh, he's a great leader, unless he is. So I think you have to factor that in, and I think it's been evident on the field. When Dylan Sampson has said, I'm going to take over a game, the rest of his teammates have responded almost like he's a quarterback. So factor that in, and you probably notch him a little bit higher than you would otherwise.
Yeah, you absolutely do. That's a great point. And so with all – and look, we're going to be fair here because I went with Travis Stevens because Dylan Sampson broke Travis Stevens' record. I was going to tout Stevens' offensive line. Dylan Sampson had help with his offensive line too. The interior blocking this year was incredible. But can we say, Dave, whatever else you think, eye test, whatever, can you say this is by far the greatest single season a running back's ever had in Tennessee history? Even if you don't think he's the best running back?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Because of the leadership ability. I think a lot of the guys, I don't think anybody looked at Travis Henry and thought, hey, there's a great leader. I don't think he needed to do that. I'm not knocking him, but I think you looked at Dylan Sampson and you thought, there's a great leader. Great
and you
service.
Don't ask your running back to be a leader like that. Oh, sorry. But you don't ask your running back to be a leader like that.
No. I think he's a special young man. Quality Tire Pro, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires. Full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports and Dave and Caleb said hello in downtown Chattanooga. Check them out. That's, Cooper was the first that tipped me off to Dylan Sampson. And it would have been going into last year before anybody thought he was special. And I just remember him saying, and you got to remember, Cooper is a guy that really loved recruiting and followed recruiting when he was in high school. He saw a special player and a special young man, and I thought Dylan Sampson was going to be really good. He exceeded my expectations, though, by a lot. I mean, does this team lose one more game or two more games if they don't have a Dylan Sampson?
Two. They lose to Alabama and Florida. They lose in both of those games without Dylan Sampson. And, I mean, there's just no way around that fact. And it's kind of interesting because I actually, even though I gave credit to the line, I see Dylan Sampson really wear down players in the second half. Look, since we're talking about the record set, Dylan Sampson broke Travis Stevens' single season rushing record. Travis Stevens broke Jay Graham's single season rushing record. You watched Jay Graham more than I did, but I did watch Travis Stevens, and I'm just going to say it. Travis Stevens was a cut and run guy with solid breakaway speed, but it felt like you could have just plugged anybody into that running game, didn't it? In 2001.
And I love the comparison with Alvin Kamara. I still wonder how different that offense would have been had they leaned on him more than Jalen Hurd. This day in Tennessee sports history brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. Daily updates. The link is right down below. What is this day in Tennessee sports history, Caleb?
Very interesting one, by the way. It goes back to 1950, 74 years ago. The week before this, and I talked about this last week, Dave, when you were out, was that big Tennessee upset win over Kentucky that I've told you about in the past, where a giant blizzard led to Tennessee upsetting Bear Bryant and Kentucky when Kentucky had the best team in college football that year. Funny to say now. But this week, following that game, Tennessee beat Vanderbilt 43-0. Now, why was that significant? Tennessee beat Vanderbilt on the same day Navy upset Army. Now, the final AP polls had already come out. So Army had finished ahead of Tennessee, but Army lost to Navy which, by the way, opened the door for Tennessee to be able to claim a retroactive national title by some of the other services that ranked the teams after the bowl games and the season ended, because Tennessee would go on to beat Texas in the Cotton Bowl, and Kentucky would go on to beat Oklahoma, leaving Tennessee. Most experts agree, had they done the rankings after the bowl games that year, Tennessee would have finished number 1. So they claim a national title for that year. But it started because of December the 2nd, Tennessee beat Vanderbilt, and Navy upset Army because Army was number 2 during that time.
Navy Schuler?
No.
Oh, okay. TriStar hats. For the latest in TriStar hats, go to the original. That's tristarhatsco.com, tristarhatsco.com. Also, want to recommend the UPS store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. Click right down below and they'll take care of you. Caleb, I go back and look at that, and I've covered a lot of meaningless bowl games, probably the vast majority of them. And it amazes me that they would do a national champion before the bowl game. It really does. And it also amazes me that anybody showed up or cared to a bowl game that meant absolutely nothing. But I guess that's pride, and they did.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the flaw. And I encourage you guys to all look at my video on the history of college football national championships. But no one ever, you want to know why the bowl games people ever started to value them and factor them, right? You want to know the big reason?
I'm ready.
TV. Once they started getting on TV and televising it, they wanted the games to matter. But before that, it was universally accepted. So they started voting on national champions in the 20s and the 30s. And it was universally accepted that bowl games shouldn't count. Because think about it, Dave. The bowl games were always played a month after the end of the regular season. And it was really nothing more than a chance for fan bases to travel to warm weather climates over New Year's Eve, over New Year's. Bowl games were effectively part of events that cities would put on to showcase their weather during the new year. So the bowl game themselves, no one ever thought they should be factored into the regular season or the actual rankings or anything like that. I mean, it was just a fun event. The Sugar Bowl was part of a fair in New Orleans, the Orange Bowl part of a fair in Miami. The Rose Bowl to this day is just still a sanctioned game by the Tournament of Roses parade. I mean, so that's all it was about.
I was thinking this as I was watching Tennessee in the early moments of the Vanderbilt game, and I'm thinking to myself that in Tennessee, if they lose this game, it's going to be the biggest loss since the 2001 SEC championship game, and probably bigger with the money that's at play now. And I thought to myself, how many Vols wouldn't show up to a bowl game if they didn't make the college football playoffs? And are we past the point where we would begrudge someone like a Cooper Mays who said, I've given 6 years to this program, it's time for me to move on? I wouldn't have a problem with them skipping the bowl game.
I mean, I'm at a level where if I'm a coach and you're out of eligibility or you want to go pro, I would actually tell you to skip the bowl game. I'd rather use the bowl just to focus on next year, which is funny. I mean, we talk about the playoff. What has the expanded playoff done, Dave? It has turned the bowl games back into what they used to be in the 50s and 40s and 30s. Like you talked about, glorified exhibitions. And wouldn't you rather, if you were a coach, forget the pride, don't you want to get ready for next year and see what you got with your backups who are going to be competing for starting jobs?
Like they did with Nico.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they kind of, I don't know for sure, but I feel like they nudged Joe Milton to opt out of the bowl game. I could be wrong on that, but
and he was practicing with the NFL football during practice, throwing it around. So they knew that he wasn't going to play the entire time, whether it was more his decision or theirs. I think it was theirs. You want to get Nico ready, and I think it was wise to do that. I mean, if his progression is not where it currently is, we're not having the next conversation that we're about to have about peaking at the right time. And peaking at the right time is partly playing in that bowl game against Iowa, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's a very good point. And you want to be able to do that. And I think that, look, I didn't set this up. I didn't do this. You expansion, lovers did this, okay? Y'all are responsible for the bowl games being what they're going to become now and making them meaningless bowl games. Y'all are responsible for Christian McCaffrey opting out, okay? I had nothing to do with this, and I take no responsibility because I warned you guys it was all going to happen.
Well, it's happening, and I think it's funny that the general consensus wouldn't be against it, and wouldn't have any problem with it. I don't think anybody would. As I remind you, portions of the program brought to you by our good friends at Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren, asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to revisit it. Is Tennessee peaking at just the right time? So let's begin with this, Caleb. If they are peaking at the right time, how much does it help them with the college football playoff selection committee?
Well, that is a huge deal because I think the selection committee factors in recency bias because, as we've talked about, it's a TV show. They want to benefit the teams with the best chance to advance. So, yeah, they're peaking at the right time.
So if they're peaking at the right time, is it because of the offensive tackles or is it this guy?
Iamaleava.
Which one? The offensive tackles or Nico?
Can I say both? Or do I have to pick?
You have to pick.
It's the offensive tackles then. I think the offensive tackles have really settled down. And because of their settling down, Nico Iamaleava, well, not settled down. They're just playing much, much better. And it's resulted in Nico Iamaleava settling down. And now with Iamaleava finally settled down, we're seeing the type of throws he can make. Dave, he made finally last week. I'm not counting the UTEP game. UTEP was a bad team, and Scotty Walden threw everything at them in the first quarter, as I knew he would. But Iamaleava made some throws on Saturday. I mean, they were impressive. He made that touchdown pass to Miles Kitzelman in the end zone was just a thing of beauty on the 10-yard go route. The pass to Dante Thornton over the middle, people keep leaving the middle of the field wide open. Now, he made one horrible throw. That interception he threw was a dramatic underthrow, and honestly, he finished 18 of 26 for 257 yards. He should have finished 19 of 27 for 337 yards and 5 touchdowns. He had Dante Thornton wide open. I think Joe Milton crept in his head because I think after seeing Joe Milton play for a year, he freaks out about overthrowing receivers. So he underthrew him in that moment. But I think he's much more settled because Lance Hurd and John Campbell Jr. are not making mistakes in pass pro. They didn't give up a sack on Saturday against Vanderbilt. So because of that, Nico is peaking at the right time. He had never thrown 4 touchdown passes in a college football game until UTEP, and now he's done it back-to-back weeks. Now, you can say it's UTEP and Vanderbilt, 2 bad teams. But those are the 2 worst teams Tennessee's played this year. So it's not like Nico. But those were Nico Iamaleava's 2 best games.
Okay, but how much of this is schedule? I mean, it fits a good narrative for Tennessee leading into the college football playoffs. They make it, and they look like one of the hottest teams out there. But how much of this is the opponent, the schedule of UTEP and Vanderbilt?
Well, you could say somewhat, Dave, but honestly, outside of Georgia, which is a difficult environment on the road at night, I mean, I think I've seen Iamaleava pretty much play elite football since the Kentucky game. And now, again, yes, Georgia was the only – and I'm actually going to go back from Kentucky. I take that back. Since the second half of Alabama. I mean, since the second half of Alabama, I think Nico Iamaleava has been superb. And I wouldn't trade him for any quarterback since that time period. I think he's been incredible. And there were issues at Kentucky, but it was because of the receivers. They set on the lead because Iamaleava got hurt against Mississippi State. But Dave, you watched that game. Iamaleava could have easily thrown 5 touchdowns if they wanted to.
Certainly.
And so they pulled him. And in the Georgia game, there were a lot of things happening in that game, a lot of factors that the defense couldn't get off the field. I'm saving this, but I'm saving this as a topic for tomorrow, David. I'm just going to tease it. I have a theory about the defense, which is that I think Tim Banks and the defense actually hid some of what they could do against Georgia because they knew they were going to go to the playoff. So that's just my thought. But because they couldn't get off the field, Nico Iamaleava and the offense couldn't do what they wanted to do. So I actually think Iamaleava has turned out. I think he's played great down the stretch. I really do. And since the second half of Alabama, he has looked mostly like the quarterback we expected him to be.
Vols playing well on offense due to offensive tackles, 52%, Nico 47%. New poll that you can vote on. Are Vols peaking at right time? Yes, look at them. No, opponents. I think you do have to factor in some of the opponents, right? Because it looked like Vanderbilt might even win that game for a short time.
It did, but Vanderbilt is going to a bowl game, and the game was technically a road game, and they did beat Alabama. I mean, I can throw all those things out there. So it's not like Vanderbilt was just a straight up walk in the park. And again, they weren't looking like this against bad opponents earlier. So I think you got to give them some credit. I think Tennessee is en route to a very, dare I say, they're the 2007 Giants.
Oh, no. Tennessee has better quarterback play.
Peak, or did they just get lucky?
What?
Did the Giants actually peak in the playoffs, or did they just get lucky?
I thought they peaked, and I thought they were really good on their defensive line, which I thought that was the comparison you were going with because Tennessee is as well. But Caleb, all that being said, I just don't see the comparison there because I think at this level, Nico is significantly better than Eli Manning.
Not like Nico right now versus Eli Manning in the NFL, right? In 2007.
Right.
You just mean relative to the level.
Freshman as opposed to multi-year NFL player.
Right. I think Nico Iamaleava, I could agree with that, but then that even favors my point. What about your first Cowboys Super Bowl with Troy Aikman? Didn't they peak in December that year, just before the playoffs in January?
They always, what their advantage was is they held really physical practices throughout the season, which a lot of people hated, but you didn't have free agency, so nobody could leave. And
okay. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So then what about okay, let me just put it to you this way. Those low seeds in college basketball that sometimes make a deep run and maybe even win the tournament and then NCAA tournament, you realize they were really young teams that just kind of got it together just in time for March. And then you realize they had the talent and they did it. My most notable one is Florida's back-to-back national titles with Joakim Noah and all those guys. Remember the first one, they were just a 3 seed. They just kind of barely got in, but what'd they do? They go win the conference tournament and then they go win the national title. It just comes together. Is this Tennessee football team the 2005-2006 Florida Gators basketball team?
David says, Nico reminds me of the Iceman, Casey Clausen. I think even Casey would say that Nico's a better runner. But I think he is going to be a guy with deft touch and a clutch player, which certainly Casey was.
Yeah, but we can't. Casey never would have fumbled a snap out of nervousness at Arkansas.
Well, that's fair.
I mean, Casey would have thrived in that moment. Are you kidding me?
No, probably right. I think that's very fair. Portions of the program brought to you by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. For Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
This is Jacob Warren asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
He does. The stat of the day is what, Caleb?
I just wanted to add one thing before I give you the stat of the day.
Okay. Go for it.
Someone brought up Brett Favre. That's a good comparison. I just looked up the 96 Packers. Yeah, they peaked. That's peaking at the right time. They had just lost 2 straight. They were 8-3. They had lost to the Cowboys in mid-November, and then they won every game after that and went on to win the Super Bowl. So
they also went against a Cowboys team that was coached by Barry Switzer, so that's worth 14 points. I mean, honestly,
no,
really,
but they lost to the Cowboys 21-6.
Yeah, but later was it the next year when they won a Super Bowl? It was Barry Switzer at the helm for the Cowboys, or that never happens.
Yes, they did, but they didn't actually beat the Cowboys. The Cowboys lost to Carolina that year because Deion Sanders got a concussion.
Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was going to give you the stat of the day, but if you want to do Hound Dogs first, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, let's get stat of the day. Brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. What do you got, Caleb?
Tennessee has now won 30 games in 3 years. It's the first time since 1998 to 2000 that they've done that. Wow. Now, more important stat, because many of you, and you will rightly point out that they play more regular season games now than they did from 98 to 2000. Fair enough. They also only have 8 losses during that time. That's the fewest number of losses they've had since 1998 to 2000. So, yeah, either way you look at it, this is their best 3-year stretch since 98 to 2000. It's their best 3-year regular season stretch of 28 wins since 97 to 99.
How do you think this team would fare against the 98 team?
Which rules are we playing by?
Are you referring to the passing rules that are now in place and the RPO rules that aren't in place?
Yes, and actually calling downfield blocking.
Somewhere in the middle.
I still think the 98 team wins.
I don't want T to hear this, but I think the quarterbacking play would be better with Nico.
So what? The quarterbacking play was better in 97 than it was in 98. The 98 team still won the national title. Okay. And by the way, I mean, we just talked about the Dylan Sampson versus Jamal Lewis, but then there's Travis Henry and Travis Stevens. Don't even get me started on that defense. That defense is just.
I will tell you, and you may think I'm crazy pinning this all on one player. It's so close in my mind that I think with a Keenan Pili, I would take this team. Without him, I would take the 98 team. That's how close it is in my mind.
I think you're crazy. I would take this team, period. I mean, I would take the 98 team, period. Which receiver is going to get separation from Dwayne Goodrich?
Probably not a lot. But you have more to throw to, and you're going to spread the field.
Okay, so then you can throw to Deion Grant. Or you can throw to a guy who's going to get rocked by Fred White. And you try to run it. I love Dylan Sampson. Has he ever ran into Al Wilson?
No, that would be more difficult.
Yeah. Come on, Dave. Come on. The 98 team's winning. That defensive lineup. First of all, okay, Sean Ellis versus these offensive tackles. I win. It's over. Sean Ellis versus these offensive tackles and the way they played this year.
Yeah, you may. That I'm going to give you that. That's a pretty good one. Our poll question is up right now. Who wins the 1998 Vols or this year's crew? You can go ahead and vote on that.
This is a crazy question. I cannot even believe Dave would think this is a game.
All right. And it's brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. HOOK for 10% off. Caleb, what about coaching? Who would you take who would you take among the 98 crew and this year's group?
Well, as an overall staff, probably this year's crew, but I have to say the offensive coordinator vastly favors Tennessee in 98. Are you taking David Cutcliffe or Joey Halsley?
Well, I'm taking Josh Heupel over David Cutcliffe.
I'm not. I think that Josh Heupel is a great overall coach in terms of, getting a system and recruiting. But in terms of put it this way, there's two types of offensive coaches you would prefer. When you are less talented and more talented. I'll take Josh Heupel's coaching if you're less talented. But Dave, if you have the Jimmies and Joes, you want, there's not a coordinator in football I'm taking over David Cutcliffe.
Okay, now what about on the defensive side? I'm taking Tim Banks over John Chavis.
Yes, but defense is all about Jimmies and Joes. Who has to coach that team defensively?
Okay, continuing to break that down. I'm taking Willie Martinez and Larry Slade would be a push. By the way, congratulations to Larry Slade, who I saw just retired recently. That would be a push. I don't think either one of them were standouts. And in Willie's case, I think he's more of a recruiter. You had Pat Washington as the receivers coach. as opposed to Kelsey Pope. So you take Pope, right?
Yes, but I'm taking Peerless Price over any receiver on either team.
You're just going to the Jimmies and Joes. You're not even having this discussion.
There is the Jimmies and Joes still win over X's and O's. I mean, at the end of the day, like, come on, guys.
Game
like,
No Bueno asked, why didn't Cutcliffe become the head coach? Well, I can tell you why, and I will do so after a quick break. Don't let me forget that, Caleb. And also, more college football playoff talk. Please click that thumbs up button. And if you haven't subscribed, do that. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team that gets the job done. It's Ford commercial truck season at Varner Ford in Clinton, where our strong lineup is built for power and performance. Step up your game in this new 24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. At 250 cargo van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, if the 98 team played this year's crew in some sort of middle-of-the-road rules set, Caleb says that the 98 team wins. I wrote a book about the 98 team. You can purchase that on offthehooksports.com. Just go to the merch shop. We'd greatly appreciate that. But Caleb, I'm curious. I think this 24 team with Keenan Pili could beat the 98 team. I'm curious how close you have the point spread. Because obviously I have it within 2 or 3 points because Keenan Pili is not affecting the game by that many points. He's just not a black hole in the middle like Jeremiah Thielander is.
I don't have it within 2 or 3 touchdowns.
Wow. I thought you'd say 6 or 7. Are you being serious?
I'm giving double digits. From every team from 97 to 99, every one of those teams is beating this team by double digits.
I think you're living in glory days like Bruce Springsteen.
This isn't living in glory days. This is looking at the NFL productivity, bro. The NFL productivity. Are you telling me that this team has 12 NFL? How many players on the team were drafted in the NFL? Are you telling me this team? How many players were Pro Bowlers that year? Okay, Sean Ellis, All Pro. Al Wilson, All Pro. Darren Walker, longtime starter in the NFL. Billy Ratliff would have been a longtime starter in the NFL had he not gotten hurt. By the way, and suffered injury. Deion Grant, longtime starter in the NFL. Dwayne Gerwich would have been an all-pro cornerback had he had not had his situation. I just named the defense. Oh, Raynoch Thompson, longtime starter in the NFL. Eric Westmoreland, longtime starter in the NFL. On the other side, Chad Clifton, all-pro. Not Fred Weary. Cozy Coleman, longtime starter in the NFL. I'm just rolling off names. Jamal Lewis, all-pro. Travis Henry, all-pro. Peerless Price, longtime starter in the NFL. Cedric Wilson, longtime starter in the NFL.
Okay, I'm gonna tell a quick story here because I teased it and I don't want to get away from it. And it's brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chatmortgage.com, chatmortgage.com. They'll help you fix your credit and get in that home that you need to be in. Caleb, so you might remember when Derek Dooley was hired. Do you remember that?
I remember it like yesterday because I felt an entire coaching search and I could not believe Derek Dooley leapfrogged some much better qualified coaches in that moment.
Okay. Would you have hired David Cutcliffe instead of Derek Dooley?
Yes.
He was at Duke at the time. I know he's not as young as everybody wants you to be as a head coach. You know, you like the pretty coach that's up there that's 42 years old. Well, David was at Duke at the time. And this is factual. There were conversations between Tennessee and David Cutcliffe. And I can tell you that David Cutcliffe reached out to other assistant coaches and said, hey, just want to let you know, we're going to do like a Sammy Hagar, Van Halen thing. And that's what was planned. And then Tennessee, the power boosters stepped in. They cut Mike Hamilton off, rest in peace, at the knees. And they went with a guy named Derek Dooley. You don't have the decade of dysfunction if you hire David Cutcliffe. You're at worst a 9 or 10 win team, right?
Yeah. And they say he's not a great recruiter. I think you can recruit yourself. I think the school recruits itself if you're at Tennessee.
Yep. Completely agree. All right. So more college football playoff talk brought to you by Commercial Bank. Commercial Bank member FDIC. Life made better. CBTN.com. CBTN.com. Should Alabama get in the college football playoff over the ACC title game loser and Miami no matter what? So Alabama would have 3 losses, and then the ACC title game loser would have 2 losses. Caleb, thoughts?
Yeah, so this all started, for those who don't know, because last week Alabama came in at number 13 in the college football playoff rankings. I believe last week they were, I pulled it up wrong. Yeah, Alabama was number 13, but they were technically like 2 spots out. SMU and Miami were ahead of them. Miami has since dropped below them because Miami lost to Syracuse, and they have fallen from 10-1 to 10-2. Clemson is playing SMU to go to the college football playoff, but Clemson is significantly below Alabama. So here's where the question comes in. If SMU beats Clemson, I think Alabama could end up finding them. Alabama finds their way in. They get in. But if Clemson beats SMU, there becomes a debate because we're talking about an 11-2 team versus a 9-3 Alabama team. I'm sorry, guys. That 9-3 Alabama team absolutely deserves to be in the college football playoff.
What did I tell you months ago? I said, face value, a 10-2 SEC team will get in.
Correct.
I got that from somebody with the SEC office. And certainly it could have been, you could have had 6 10-2 teams, I guess, and that not happen. I think that you will see that Alabama will get preferential treatment. I guess I'm supposed to disagree with you because it's good radio, like we're Skip Bayless or something. But I'm going to agree with you. I think they get preferential treatment and should. I don't think the SEC has been incredibly great this year, but it's been pretty consistent through and through. So, Caleb, I can't really argue with you. I think Alabama not only should get in, but will get in. That's Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Okay, we'll get into another area in which the college football playoff has looked kind of stupid because of this whole committee thing. But do they take a hit if they take a 9-3 team over a 10-2 SEC team? I'm sorry, I said that backwards. A 9-3 Alabama over a 10-2 ACC team. Do they take a hit? Is that a negative PR for them?
They take negative PR because, again, this is hypothetically if Clemson beats SMU. If SMU beats Clemson, we're not talking about anything because Clemson has 4 losses at that point, and they're a 9-3 team too. They take a hit because they told us that they weren't going to count the conference championship games against teams who went to play in them, which Dave, you and I both knew that was a lie. Mm-hmm. And that's where they take the hit. But honestly, conference title game or not, SMU got to avoid playing Clemson and Miami this year in the ACC, the 2 best teams. They play one of them and get blown out. How do you justify then saying, well, they still made their conference title game and they got the regular season resume? No, I'm sorry. That Alabama 9-3 record is better. And I'm going to challenge our listeners because some people, Dave, when you were off last week, were saying that Alabama is getting biased with their number 13 college football ranking. Who deserves to be in over Alabama? First of all, we all on this thread, even if you think Alabama gets preferential treatment, we all agree that a 3-loss SEC team is just by nature better than a 1-loss ACC team because the conferences are there's so much imbalance and the conferences are so much better in the SEC. If you believe that, then by definition, you have to say Alabama deserves it over SMU. So then your debate doesn't come to Alabama or SMU, Dave. Your debate boils down to Alabama or South Carolina or Ole Miss among 9-3 SEC teams. Well, Alabama did beat South Carolina. So, and Ole Miss has the worst schedule strength of all of them, and Alabama has the toughest. How do you justify? So maybe if you want to be an SEC homer but an Alabama hater, you say South Carolina goes over them. How do you justify that when Alabama beat South Carolina?
If you're the committee, you're a committee member, and they ask you to rank the 3 SEC teams that you just mentioned, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Alabama. How do you have them ranked? Brought to you by Double D Piping Fire Protection Contractors, providing around-the-clock service, protecting our customers' lives and properties at all times. Caleb, how would you rank those 3 teams?
I would go Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, in that order, by the way. And Alabama, their strength of record is slightly higher than South Carolina's. South Carolina's strength of schedule is slightly higher than Alabama's. It's a wash. The tiebreaker has to be head-to-head at that point. I'm not like live and die by head-to-head, but Dave, when you got 2 identical resumes and it's just 2 teams, shouldn't you always favor head-to-head in that moment?
I think so. I thought that Tennessee got hosed in 2022 when Alabama was ahead of them. And I don't care that Hendon Hooker was hurt, and I don't care that they looked so bad against South Carolina. I would still go back to head-to-head if all things equal. I'll tell you how I would rank them. Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. Again, because I'm putting together a TV show. Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin are more exciting than Shane Beamer, who's going off about how the Gamecocks should make the college football playoff. I mean, just openly politicking. I guess that's part of his job, but Caleb, I'm taking Ole Miss because I think they're more exciting with Lane Kiffin.
Oh, I do too, and I also think Ole Miss is better. They have more talent. They're capable of beating top-tier teams. I'm not sure South Carolina is, but I just want to point out another stat of the day real quick, not Tennessee related. Shane Beamer has a better record through his first 4 seasons than Steve Spurrier did at South Carolina. Just saying. Who's the better coach? Who's the better coach, guys?
Hold on. Steve Spurrier kind of laid the groundwork there. He helped them get facilities built.
Well, Steve Spurrier inherited a program from the legendary Lou Holtz, though. One of the greatest geniuses of college football, okay?
Brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas, the best spas right there in Athens. Best chemicals for your pool and spa right there in Athens. Stop by, mention Off the Hook Sports, and you get a free prize. You can go with a book or a shirt and $500 off. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Caleb, what aspect of this whole college football playoff do you find most disturbing?
Let's sticking with the Alabama thing for a minute. I do find it most disturbing that people complaining about it are the same ones who lobbied for expansion. And we'll get to what makes it look really stupid in a minute. But Dave, I just want to point out, can I get an I told you so?
Yes. Go for it.
Here's what people wanted, Dave, when they wanted expansion. They felt that there was too much outsized influence held by the SEC. So they felt if you just open the playing field a little more, give other teams some chances, it'll neutralize the SEC. I said that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is you're going to give 9 and 3 SEC teams a chance to play for the national title after going 9 and 3 in the regular season. Well, guess what? 9 and 3 Alabama is going to have a chance to play for the national title. A lot of the expansion arguments people were in favor of it because they felt Alabama got too much preferential treatment. Now, because you expanded, Alabama is getting in as a 9 and 3 team potentially. You asked for it. I told you guys this would happen. They all thought that would mean, more Mountain West teams or more Conference USA teams and everybody gets in. No, that wasn't going to happen, guys. It was just going to increase the 9 and 3 SEC teams that get in. And I told you that would happen.
You know, you got bonus coverage. You got 2 different voices in one segment from Caleb. Well, 3, including his own. By the way, the one you did earlier sounded a lot like Bill Cosby, so you might want to drop that one. Get your jello, the pudding pops.
Oh, my goodness.
You take the drink, young lady. All right, stay tuned. More reasons why the college football playoff committee is a little bit bunk, but that doesn't matter because Tennessee is going to make it. But you also a Twitter war. Do we want to go ahead and dive into a Twitter war with Lane Kiffin and Brett Bielema?
Yes, Lane Kiffin and Brett Bielema are in a Twitter war over which 9 and 3 team should get into the college football playoff. I kid you not, Dave.
Okay.
So, for context,
tell it to me. What do you got?
Both Illinois and Ole Miss are 9 and 3 teams, and they're in the top 25. Lane Kiffin you talk about Shane Beamer, is doing his job, and he tweeted out yesterday at 5:46 p.m. the resumes on why Ole Miss should go. And here's what he tweeted out. I don't know where he got this from because it looks like it came from a phone, but it doesn't show. So this up himself, something Lane Kiffin would probably do. But
wait, you broke up. Repeat what you just said.
Lane Kiffin has shared a screenshot that's breaking down stats that favor Ole Miss as a 9 and 3 team. It looks like it came from a phone, but we don't know whose phone. So Lane Kiffin, funny enough, could have just written this out himself and pretended he was sharing it, that somebody is sharing it from somebody else. But here's what it says. After all the chaos yesterday, there looks to be 3 bubble teams fighting for the last remaining playoff spot. All 3 are 9 and 3 and represent the SEC, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Alabama. He says South Carolina lost to both of them, and their best win is Clemson. Ole Miss and Alabama's best win is Georgia. Georgia beat Clemson 34-3. Safe to say that South Carolina is out, and it's between Ole Miss and Alabama. Ole Miss has 9 wins, outscoring their opponents by 296. Alabama has 9, outscoring their opponents by 252. In 3 losses, Ole Miss was outscored by 13. Alabama was outscored by 33. Common opponents both beat Georgia, but Ole Miss won by more. Both beat South Carolina, but Ole Miss won by more. Alabama beat LSU. Ole Miss lost to LSU in overtime. Ole Miss beat Oklahoma. Alabama lost to Oklahoma. And then he ends with, clearly Ole Miss should be in the playoff over Alabama, but Bama is the bigger brand and more likely will get in over Ole Miss. By the way, that doesn't make any sense. What Dave shared, what Lane Kiffin shared literally shows that their resumes are even. So the tiebreaker should be Alabama for actually beating for actually having a higher strength of schedule than Ole Miss. But okay, let's go back. Let's go to Brett Bielema at this point, who tweets at Lane Kiffin. I couldn't agree more, Lane Kiffin. Here is a thought for the college football playoff. Ole Miss is number 31 ranked strength of schedule and has 3 losses to unranked Kentucky, Florida, and an 8-4 LSU team. Illinois has the number 30th ranked strength of schedule. It has 3 losses to number 1 Oregon, number 4 Penn State, and a 1 possession game to Minnesota. How about we just take the best 12 teams and see where it goes? So you have Lane Kiffin and Brett Bielema jockeying for that final spot in the college football playoff that I'm telling you guys is going to go to Alabama. And this is just like the hilarious catfight.
I think it's definitely going to Alabama. And the two, surprisingly enough, given how they look, can actually battle on girlfriend status. because Brett Bielema's got a pretty good looking one that he picked up in the athletic department there and just met at Las Vegas randomly. But have you seen her, Mrs. Bielema?
I have not, but is that where the comment comes over here? Are they fighting over the same 23-year-old?
Yeah, maybe. That's the one thing they have in common.
Is that why they're at odds right now?
Yes. So
Lane Kiffin stole his girlfriend.
I mean, you do know the Brett Bielema story, right?
Where he picked up some rando in Vegas.
Well, no, she wasn't random. She worked in the athletic department at Arkansas, and they just wanted to make it look like they met there. They didn't just meet there.
Oh, okay. So they set up a whole trip to Vegas to make it pretend like they met in Vegas.
Because they didn't let HR know, apparently.
So, Dave, let's be honest. Do you think Lane Kiffin is trolling with this whole soliloquy, or was he really trying to make a case for Ole Miss to get in?
I think he knows that they're not getting in, Caleb, and like you said, somebody handed him some info and he just threw it out there.
So he's basically Lane Kiffin is the Elon Musk of college football, isn't he? Just kind of trolling people on Twitter all the time. Elon Musk now just trolls people all the time, kind of like mad genius, you know what I mean? And Lane Kiffin's kind of that, but what is Brett Bielema doing inserting himself? And that's the Illinois doesn't have Dave. Illinois' best win is over Nebraska.
I haven't even heard Illinois be mentioned as far as being a member of the college football playoff.
No, because they are 9-3 and they have literally no quality wins. They beat 3 teams in the top 25. Okay, but let me break down those teams real quick. Kansas, who was number 19 at the time, but Kansas finished 5-7. Nebraska, who was number 22 at the time, but finished 6-6. And then Michigan, who was number 24 at the time, but finished 7-5. Let's be honest here for a minute. Come on. When you take those 3 things into account, you got to sit there and say that Illinois is not Ole Miss's level one, because Ole Miss has a quality win over Georgia, or Alabama's level. And so it comes down to Alabama or Ole Miss. There is no head-to-head. Don't you agree, Dave, that when there is no head-to-head, if there's a substantial difference in schedule strength, that should make the difference?
I can roll with that. I got no problem with that. If that's what you want to do, strength of schedule would be, if no head-to-head, the determining factor.
I totally agree. So let's ask this question with what Lane Kiffin and Brett Bielema are doing. This is the other thing I warned you guys would happen. Y'all thought controversy would end with expanding the playoff. It's gotten deeper. It's gotten worse because now you have 9-3 teams fighting over who should go. If you are a 9-3 team, it's one thing to be a 11-1 team fighting for this number 2 spot, right? To go to the national title, or maybe the number 4 spot.
Yeah, but I think 9-3, you have no right to gripe if you don't make it. Is that where you're going?
Yes, that's where I'm going. You have no right to gripe if you don't make it at 9-3. Not only do you not have any right to gripe, do you look like you're just doing your job to promote your program, or do you look like an utter whiner if you're whining at 9-3 to say you deserve to get in?
I think you're supposed to promote your program, especially when it's objective and it's in the minds of these committee members, some of which I don't know if they've watched any of the games this year.
I mean, we agree with you. We agree with each other on that. There's proof they don't watch the games.
So I think it's, I think they watch highlights, which would probably benefit Ole Miss. Just Ole Miss can't lose that game to Kentucky. That's not even a good Kentucky team. And it was at home.
It was at home. It's one thing for Ohio State to lose to Michigan at home, which they shouldn't do. But Michigan finished 7-5, and that's a rivalry game. I think you and I both agree anything can happen to those type of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky's a bad football team, guys. And you lost to them at home. And then you have a loss to a 5-7 team and a loss to a 7-5 team. Now, I get it. I guess we could say Florida speaking at the right time in a top 25 caliber team. But they did finish the year 7-5, Dave. They didn't finish 9-3.
Yep.
And I'm sorry. I think Lane Kiffin, I don't think there's any case you can make for Ole Miss. It's Alabama. If there's a 3-loss team that's going to get in, it's Alabama. And guys, I'm sorry. It should be Alabama.
Yep. Watch where you put that poll. Flag planning coming up next. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Thoughts on the new flag planning thing that's become such a big deal. And also, does Clemson losing but increasing their CFP odds prove the format is stupid. We'll get to both of those topics. Stay tuned. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. 24 Ford Transit 250 Cargo Van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929. Local you trust, power you can afford.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Let's make this a poll question. Better coach, Brett Bielema, Lane Kiffin. Is that worthy of a poll question?
Well, I would first like to point out your question you thought was a poll question. Who wins the 98 Vols or this year's crew? And 83% say the 98 Vols. So,
well, look at these guys getting a little respect.
Okay. So, all right. Yeah, let's do it. Who's a better coach? How about who's a bigger whiner?
Oh, I like it. All right. Go ahead and set that up as we're going to turn our attention to flag planning. And that became a monstrous issue over the weekend with Michigan and Ohio State. In particular, there was a bit of a brawl, but that wasn't the only game, Caleb. So let me start out with this. Flag planning, bad sportsmanship, okay, have a good time.
See, here's where I'm mixed on it. I think it's bad sportsmanship. I don't think you should do it. But I don't think you have a right to fight players doing it if you're the other side. You look lame when you do that. And so...
First of all, when you lose, you should just get off the field, right?
Get off the field. Take the L. Hold that L, as the kids say.
Yeah, I remember interviewing, I can't remember his name, but it was a Florida defensive lineman. I remember he had the most awesome grill. And he stood right on the power tee at the 50-yard line and gave interviews. And I thought to myself at the time, if there are any Tennessee players around here, they would come and say something. But they were smart. They went and got in their locker room. Listen, Ohio State should be used to losing to Michigan. That was the 4th time in a row.
Yes. Yes. You want me to show you some of the videos of all this happening, Dave?
I would love it.
Let's have some fun here. Let's have some fun. All right. So we'll start with the one you just brought up, the Ohio State Michigan one. And this one is just epic. Let's just take a look at this. Watch this. Michigan tries to plant the flag at midfield, and the fight just goes. Look at that.
I like it. That's not even a player who's doing it, is it?
Yeah, it's a player right there. The player that ripped the flag. See, I love that. According to reports, this is another reason that Ryan Day should maybe lose his job. He just stood there and was letting it happen. He had no control over his players doing it whatsoever.
It's not a good look.
No. So, and then one Ohio State player kind of cried about it. I'm trying to remember who it was, but he basically said they're not going to plant their flag at our Jack Sawyer screamed, "They've got their effing flag," and was very upset. It's like, bro, you lost to Ohio State, you lost to Michigan 4 years in a row. You should have no pride at this point. But
hey, listen, maybe I'm not a wrestling fan, but I respect the fact that they put on a great show. A professional wrestling fan, I got no problem with it, and I think that there should be a rule passed that if you win, you get to plant the flag, and the other team can't do anything about it, or they face potential suspensions or fines the next week.
I'm totally fine with that. Here's a quick funny one real quick. NC State, another quality win officially for Tennessee because they won over the weekend, Dave, against North Carolina, and they're bowl eligible. They planted the fat flag at midfield. Look what North Carolina decided to do out of anger. Just watch this. Here we go. Check this out. He takes the flag and he throws it. But you lost. You look even lamer at that point, don't you?
Yes. And I like how there was a little person, I believe, came up and pushed him there. I'm not sure what happened there. If you want to cue that back up. That wasn't even a player, I don't think. Oh, no, that is a player.
It's a player.
Okay.
Yep. So like that happened. Oh, it just lovely stuff. And then just got to show you this one real quick. Florida State. Now, here's what's interesting about Florida State. In 2003, a group of ACC officials rigged a game for Florida State against Florida. It was a rigged job. Chris Ricks beat Florida that year, and they went in the swamp. And Florida State fans stomped on the Florida midfield logo, and a fight broke out. Florida State didn't win again until 2011.
Well, if you're the NCAA or whoever is the governing body nowadays, you have to take a stand one way or the other, right? You either have to say that you get fined and potentially suspended, some sort of punitive action if you plant the flag, or you've got to say to the other crew, you've got to get off the field. I prefer the latter. I'd go after the crew that started the fight, but ultimately you can't have the fights happening because there are normal sized people there among the group, and you could get somebody seriously hurt.
Exactly. And I'm going to show you guys two more real quick, but I'm with you, Dave. And you got to tell the losing team to get off the field. And I want to point out this difference real quick, because we defended Amari Thomas earlier in the year when he threw a fan to the side, down to the ground. They were trying to get off the field. Amari Thomas was trying to get off the field, and a fan ran into him, and he was upset, and he did that. I'm sorry, that's totally different than staying on the field to fight the opposing team for planting their flag at midfield. Here's the Florida State one. This one is a good one too. Right here. You got to love this. They plant the flag and fights break out. But there's one more. This is my favorite of the weekend, Dave. This is what.
Why did this suddenly become something over the weekend?
That's what I want to address. But there is one last one, two last ones that were kind of, one was hilarious, but one was dirty. So this happened with Notre Dame and USC. Okay, and I don't know if you saw this. And Notre Dame won this game, so I can't believe that they did this. But look at this play right here. See that?
Yes.
He should be suspended, right?
Yes.
Like, you can't punch a player in the middle of a game like that. But this is the best one, and then we'll talk about it. My last one, the mascots for Arizona and Arizona State got into a fight, a legit fight.
It's gold.
I kid you not. Yeah, this happened over the weekend.
Don't you think that's probably made up, though? Or are they really fighting?
Well, there is smiling, but I don't know, because then there was fighting by Arizona and Arizona State at midfield at the end of the game. So I don't know why it all happened this week. I'll tell you this. Really throws cold water on my argument that the expanded playoff devalues the regular season. I'll give you that, because
thank you.
And by the way, did you guys see there was some jawing with Tennessee and Vanderbilt too? Did you see Nico Iamaleava got into a couple of Vanderbilt guys' faces after throwing a touchdown pass to Miles Kitzelman?
I did.
And so what do you think is causing the increased tension between these rivalries this year, Dave? Because I've never seen it this bad. And I love it. When I mean bad, I mean good, because I'm here for the entertainment.
It's a good question. I do think the intensity of the regular season has been amped up a notch by the college football playoff. I think a lot of teams still look at it as, hey, we've just got 2 losses and it's mid-October and still go out and make this thing. I mean, that's what South Carolina was saying to itself, right?
Yeah, it is. But it's just interesting because, okay, we talk about many of these teams I just showed you weren't playing for any national title, weren't going to get into the college football playoff. Florida State, for example. On top of that, we've been told constantly, Dave, that because of NIL and the transfer portal, these kids are mercenaries and don't really care about the program, right? Well, that's a flat out lie.
I don't think that's true. I think some are. I think Ole Miss has a couple that are. I think you find that out in the bowl games if guys are coming or leaving, and you can judge that. I think Tennessee has a really good culture, and you wouldn't see that as much. But yeah, I see what you're saying. By the way, our poll question: who's a bigger whiner? Lane Kiffin at 69%, Brett Bielema at 31%, and Caleb, I'm siding with the winner. And the guy that's throwing down the flag just won the game. It's your job as the opposing team to get off the field. Now, I say that, and I sound like a hypocrite. Because if I am one of those players and I'm jogging off the field and I look over my shoulder and I see that somebody's planting a flag on my field, I am going to stop and go back.
I understand. It's basically you, but you would be the focus of, I don't want this loss to happen, so I'm going to make sure they can't plant the flag on my field. A good example, people are bringing this up on the side, on the message board. When Tennessee upset Georgia in 2004, Jason Allen took the Tennessee flag and planted it at midfield. But part of that, and Dave, you covered that, that was probably where hatred for Georgia was at an all-time high for Tennessee, because I think I remember Georgia they had won 4 straight over Tennessee, and they were obnoxiously trolling Tennessee for a period of time because of it, and really took it to another level. So the hate got pretty big there.
Again, our poll question: Lane Kiffin over Brett Bielema, 67% to 33% as the biggest whiner. Lance saying Brett would have beaten Kentucky. He would have, because he runs a pretty physical program, and they got out physical. The Rebels did on that day.
That is true. That is true.
Right. But the better coach is Lane Kiffin, right?
The better coach is Lane Kiffin. Brett runs a proper program for the Big Ten, though. Let's put it that way. But yes, Lane Kiffin's the better overall coach. I think one of the, and by the way, yeah, Texas, Auburn and Alabama and Texas A&M and Texas both had fights at the end of the game too of this. So it was a fun weekend of rivalry week. Was it, do you want to see more of this, Dave?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you why. And it's brought to you by TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
Those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TristarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
All right, I want to go ahead and tell you that Caleb was late to the party. I told him that the College Football Playoff Committee was just goofy and that it should be formulaic. And at the time, Caleb was, I don't know, he's okay with it. And now we've seen that it's goofy. They want to move one up and one down each week to make it must-watch TV. Because if it were chalk and you knew that, just like I can predict the AP poll 9 times out of 10, Caleb, I'm sure you can as well. If it's just going to be chalk, you're not watching TV. I think it is all about the ratings. It's all about the advertising sales. And that's just ultimately what the television show is about. Now, if you want to say that a committee should be put after the year and decide one time in one show only, I can kind of get on board with that, but that's not what this is about. If there were a BCS formula in place, you would see it on Sunday morning and you would have no reason to watch on Tuesday night. Caleb, it's every bit what this is about. And I thought that Clemson losing, but increasing their college football playoff odds truly made the whole format look kind of stupid.
Yeah, well, I think this actually validates my point, which is that the college football playoff and the expanded playoff is stupid. Because even if you had a formula where you could come
validation, is that what that is?
Oh yeah, where you could win me over is this. I did defend auto bids. I can't defend auto bids at this point because here's what happened over the weekend. Clemson entered Saturday 9-2 at a 38% chance of making the college football playoff. Then they lost to South Carolina. So they should have been out. Well, Miami lost to Syracuse in an upset, finishing the year 10-2. Syracuse finishing 9-3. By the way, Miami losing, that fulfilled Dave and I's prediction that no matter how good they were, Mario Cristobal was going to find a way to screw it up. Yep. And he found a way to screw it up. So what happens? Clemson, as a 9-3 team, is propelled to the ACC title game to play SMU. Beat SMU, and they're automatically in as an auto bid. It is here. So it is, you can blame one of three things. You can blame the expanded playoff, you can blame the auto bids, or you can blame what I'm going to blame, Dave. And here's where I'm going to go. And I'm going to rely on this. This is the stupidity of mega conferences without divisions. It's the dumbest thing in the world. Clemson, SMU, and Miami were in a fight to play for the ACC title this year. Top 3 teams. Not one of them played the other one.
Ouch.
Like, that's insane. In the SEC, Georgia, by default, for some random tie-breaking scenario with a bunch of 10-2 teams, is going to go play Texas for the SEC title. The scheduling imbalance in these conferences is insane. And when you have it with the 12-team playoff and with auto bids, you have a crazy situation where Clemson can lose and fall to 9-3 and increase their odds to reach the college football playoff. That's absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, this is my problem with the expanded playoff in general. I don't like seeing 9-3 teams go play for the national title. I don't think you should have a shot.
If we see a 9-3 ACC team, then just shut it down. Just shut it down. If we see them in the college football playoff, shut it down. 9-3 Alabama, I can kind of get behind, but not a 9-3 ACC team. Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com, RickTerryJewelry.com. So, Caleb, do you hate the fact that a 3-loss team could make it, or that a 3-loss ACC team could make it?
Well, I hate that a 3-loss team could make it, but I think Alabama should because you have a 12-team playoff. A 3-loss ACC team making it is absolutely insane. No, you're right. It's absolutely ridiculous. There is no way a 3-loss ACC team should make it. So then, Dave, the question becomes, if a 3-loss ACC team shouldn't make it, should there be 2 Group of 5 champions going? I mean, right now, I guess theoretically, I didn't even think about this, but, this weekend, you have UNLV playing Boise State for the Mountain West Championship and Tulane playing Army for the American Athletic Championship. What if Tulane, a 9-3 American team, gets into the playoff and Boise State, and then you ice out Clemson? I mean, this is what we're talking about here. This is what we're dealing with. Is a 9-3 ACC team, you are right, could get in. I thought the playoff was bad enough where a 9-3 SEC team would get in, and I would have a problem with that. But you're setting it up now where a 9-3 ACC team can get in. This is absolutely laughable. You're insulting all of our intelligence here to say that Clemson is deserving of a playoff bid.
What do you think this evolves into? Is it 4 mega conferences, kind of like it is now, or I think it evolves into this. You have basically the Big Ten and the SEC are the American and National League, like in Major League Baseball. I think that's what you're going to see.
I think so too.
And then I think what you're able to do there is you're able to play non-conference games that aren't boring as all get out. If you enjoyed the Kent State game, that's because you're a Tennessee fan. Nobody else enjoyed that. Even Kent State didn't. Nobody else. So, Caleb, I think that's what it evolves to. The problem is you've got to cut out the ACC. You've got to potentially cut out the Big 12. You might cut out the Power 5 guys, but I don't have a problem with that.
I mean, at some point, you're going to have to figure this out and structure this better, because it is kind of insane right now. This is a warning we all had for mega conferences when mega conferences began, by the way. We all said mega conferences could create this situation, and they have. The scheduling imbalance is just too great. Yeah. And so I'm with you. It'll probably have to be the SEC and the Big Ten. By the way, sidebar, John Adams and I spoke last week, Dave. Go watch some Kent State games. We both think they're point shaving. Like, we think they're actually point shaving. It's no one's that bad and no coach is that dumb. So it's we're pretty convinced. But aside from that, yeah, I this is the thing. I don't like college basketball because I think the NCAA tournament just totally devalues the regular season with 68 teams. But I think there's a more consistent through line in how they're selecting their teams than what's happening with this college football playoff. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Where
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, they never set up a situation where you just want to lose. Now, Tennessee did throw the SEC tournament last year, but that had to do with them not wanting to play, not because they just straight up wanted to lose. They just didn't want to try that hard. So, look, I am sorry. This is absolutely ridiculous. Here's what I think should happen, Dave. You just bring up the American and National with the SEC and the Big Ten. Take the top whatever teams at this point. Don't even have conferences. And just take the top 12 if you're going to do this.
Oh, no. I don't have any problem with that. That's what I would do. And to that point, if you want to vote on our poll question, college football playoff should have a formula, stick with the committee. I'm wondering how many people will say stick with the committee. Maybe some of you like to watch the television show. Do you find the television show entertaining, Caleb, but just as far as compelling television?
I mean, it gives us something to talk about every Wednesday morning when we're trying to put together the show. That's about all it does, isn't it? Yeah. And I mean, and guys, guess what? Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about it. I mean, we have to. It's our job.
Yeah, I think what happened is that the last time they did something very innovative was the BCS, right? And Tennessee won the first national championship under the BCS rules. And what happened either that year or the next year, that people figured out the formula. And you knew that if your team won, it would increase their odds by blah. And you knew if your team lost, it would increase your odds by this. And there was no excitement leading into the week. Now, from purely a pop culture entertainment standpoint, you have the AP, you have the stupid coaches poll, you also have the college football playoff committee. You have something that's churning interest all the time. And as long as they're doing that, they're not losing. We're looking at the college football playoff and saying, man, it's kind of a bleep show, if you know what I mean. And they're looking at it like you're talking about us each and every day.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's also disincentivized playing as I talked about, playing for the conference title games. I mean, Dave, don't you think Tennessee is super happy they're not going to Atlanta this week? Don't you think they love the 3 weeks off?
Well, and I was getting ready to go there because Travis said on our chat board, and please click that thumbs up button and give us a comment. And go ahead and share that. What did Travis have to say?
Northern media chatter is that Ohio State threw the Michigan game to skip a title. It's a lie, but still circulating. Travis, I'm not so sure that's a lie. The more I think about it.
That, to me, is a lot less egregious than throwing the SEC championship game.
What, throwing the Ohio State Michigan game?
It's still a regular season game. If you're playing for a conference championship, you can't throw that, unlike what you say.
No, I've never been. When I say throw, I don't actually mean lose on purpose. I mean simplify your game plan to the point where you don't have to exert any effort And if you do lose, you lose. Okay.
That's throwing it.
I'm not so sure that Ohio State didn't do that. Now the question becomes, the only reason you think they didn't is because the fighting at the end of the game. Maybe that's why they were fighting them. Maybe they threw the game and they're like, who are you guys to like brag? We just gave you all this win because we didn't want to go play in the Big Ten title game. I mean, look, I follow Georgia Twitter. Dave, they're not happy that they're going to play in the SEC title game this week. They're not. They're like, we'd rather just get our home game. And now they have to choose between, and think about the position you're in if you're Georgia. You're 10-2. You have to choose between winning your conference title game and getting a bye, or losing and potentially being knocked out of home field advantage. Whereas if you didn't go, you would just be locked into home field advantage. I mean, you would rather not go. They are punished for winning the tiebreaker.
Will there be an SEC championship game in 5 years? Last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me. No contacts, no glasses, LASIK surgery. I was at the doctor, and they were just bragging about how well I could see thanks to doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
To visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com. Simply the best.
All right. There will be an SEC championship game in 5 years, Caleb. Yes or no?
Yes. There will be an SEC championship game for the same reason, Dave, that many newspapers still print papers, because their business model is so embedded in it that they can't break from it. The SEC's business model, including their contracts with ESPN and stuff like that, is embedded in having a championship game. They can't actually not get rid of it. They have to figure out how to make it mean something. Josh Pate has suggested this, and I think this is what's going to happen. I think somehow they're going to figure out a way to incorporate the conference title games into the college football playoff in the future. I don't know how.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that. A loser doesn't get to go. I'm cool with that. I think that's a pretty good idea. Our poll question is now, I'd rather blank have a home college football playoff game or win a conference championship. I'd rather win a conference championship. And Caleb, I know you're going to disagree with that. I know you're going to disagree with that, but at least I know I've got a trophy. If I win a home, I'm not even guaranteeing that you'll win the home college football playoff game. But even if you do win it, it doesn't mean you're winning anything that particular season other than the ability to get in the Final Four.
Winning a conference championship at this point is like winning your division in the NFL. Okay. Do you think anybody you try to win your division just for the home field advantage aspect, Dave? But come on, do you think the Giants in 2007, your Cowboys won the division that year? I don't hear your Cowboys be like, y'all may have won the Super Bowl, but we won the NFC East. So how about that? Okay. Who said that? Okay.
But those complaining about the voices, at least that wasn't the Bill Cosby voice from earlier.
No. But Dave, do you ever say that to a Giants fan? Do you ever be like, you may have won the Super Bowl, but my team won the NFC East that year, so we're the division champions.
No, okay. You don't. I'd rather blank have a home college football playoff game, win a conference championship. Okay, let's assume, and go ahead, and I don't have time to reset the poll question, so just give us your comments if you don't care. I'm going to say you lose the home college football playoff game, that you lose it, you know you've lost, as opposed to winning a conference championship.
Well, then obviously you'll take winning the conference championship. Obviously. Because, then you're still going to the playoff. Yeah. But also at that point, that benefits your college football playoff outlooks. Because would you rather win a conference championship and have the potential to win it all, or know you're going to lose the home college football playoff game? So come on now. In that situation, obviously you take winning the conference title. But the overall focus is just the college football playoff. Yeah. Conference titles are dead. I know a lot of Tennessee fans were telling me in the middle of the season, Dave, I don't want to go to Atlanta. I don't want to want to waste that week. And Georgia fans are not happy about going to Atlanta. They don't want to go.
Asia Cafe, treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes, 5 locations to choose from. And the awesome part about asiacafe.org is they have that 6-1 Brazilian cocoa energy booster premix instant white coffee. It's fantastic. The Lim Dynasty is in Knoxville, Tennessee. That is asiacafe.org. So for the record, you think that there will be no SEC championship game, that there will be one that has implications of the playoffs, or they'll just be status quo because it's a ton of cash?
I think it'll be status quo, but they're going to find a way to make the conference championship games mean more. I don't know how. My argument is you make the conference championship winner get an automatic bye and a home game. But if you do that, then you devalue the bowls, and they don't want to devalue the bowls. So
I think the new bowls are going to be the conference championship games. I think they're going to be completely meaningless.
Oh, I'm with you. Oh, I could see that, but that they will. First of all, these bowls should. Why are we still doing bowl games, guys?
I have no idea.
Like, honestly, you have an expanded playoff now. Like, this is just ridiculous. It's laughable.
I'll be honest with you. I covered 10 bowls, and about 6 of those were for newspaper. I pre-wrote pretty much everything. Just went on the trip and sent my story in each day that I'd written back in Knoxville. I mean, you didn't need to. Nobody needed to be there. I mean, it was bowl games were just bizarre.
Yeah, no, you're right. They are. It's always been it was always a laughable gimmick in college football where like, oh, you finish your regular season. Now you got to wait a month to play this game. You know what I mean? So I don't know. This whole thing is laughably stupid. I'm just going to say it.
Tomorrow will be John Adams, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Please hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you've subscribed, and we'll continue bringing it each and every day from 10 to noon on Off the Hook Sports. Be sure you've got that thumbs up button and you are subscribed. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a